In this video, I'm going to walk you through my exact Adobe workflow for designing custom wedding invitations. So I'm going to talk to you about how we go from something like this that's totally blank all the way to something like this with a fully custom design. I'm going to specifically show you what we're doing in Adobe so that we make that process easier and faster. I like to use 3 programs to design: Adobe Illustrator, Adobe InDesign, and Adobe Photoshop. So I'll show you how they all connect. And I do have a whole class showing you exactly how to use each of these for wedding invitation design. If you want to check that out, I'll link it in the description of this video. I use an Adobe Illustrator template file here, so every time I open it, it's brand new, but it's got all of the elements that I need. We have placeholders for all the information I need. We have the most common pieces that I need in the most common sizes that I use them. And then we have some things like this rectangle is already drawn for the background color of the envelopes and the RSVP envelopes. I also have my envelope liner, die template, and this shape that's kind of just the front of the envelope to show that. So these are all the pieces I typically need in a suite. And then from there, I'm going to draw out any other pieces that I need based on the client's invoice. All of my invoicing, etc., is going to be shown in Dubsado. I have tons of other videos on that, but when I look at their invoice, I'm thinking, okay, they have a details card, they have mail-in RSVPs. If they don't, then maybe I'll delete the RSVP envelope file, for instance. If they have an envelope liner, I'll keep that one where it is. Let's say these people are doing online RSVPs, but then they need a vellum wrap as well. So I know my vellum wrap file needs to be 10 by 7, right? Yeah. So I'm going to put that on there. Maybe they need a wax seal, a ribbon, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure there's an artboard for every single piece of their suite. If it's not something I use commonly, then I might just add a little note to myself about what that is. So this is like a 1 by 1. And I might just add a tiny little note here that's like wax seal. I like to make my notes bright yellow so that I can always see them, and then I lock them so that nothing's happening with them. So once I have the pieces of the suite laid out, the first thing I typically do is colors. And I will grab their inspiration board or any images and bring them in here. Right now I just have kind of this color palette that I created based on theoretically what this imaginary client wants. So I'm going to look through these colors and think about which ones are going to be envelopes, which ones can be other materials. Like if there's a ribbon, which of these colors is something that a ribbon can come in, or something close to it. How close can I get with printing? How close can I get with paper and envelopes that already exist? How close can I get with wax seals that exist? Because for instance, if we really want to use this color, but I don't know of any wax seals, ribbons, or envelopes that exist in that color, then that tells me that we need to print that color because we have a lot more flexibility when it comes to printing. So I'm just going to start kind of questioning what things I know are in which color palettes. Sometimes this involves some sourcing, but I typically use a lot of the same vendors, so I know them fairly well. And I keep all of my vendors in an Adobe library. This can be used throughout all of Adobe Creative Cloud programs. So Photoshop, InDesign, and Illustrator, I can access the same library. And this one is called the Stationery CC library. It's got like 30 something vendors that a lot of stationery designers use. I'll link in the description if you want to grab it. But we have die cut shapes. So that's where I get shapes for like this envelope liner or any other shapes that I'm trying to do. If I know I'm going to print through Printswell, for instance, which is who I print most of my work through, then I can go through and look at what shapes they have and pull them directly into my document. If I want to have a wax seal, then I can just click here. I know I'm going to use Artist Error, so I can scroll through all of their colors and see which colors are kind of getting close to where we want to be in this file. So as an example, this sangria is pretty close. So then maybe preliminarily, I'm just going to say that our wax seal is going to be this sangria color. And then I know that we don't have to pull it into some of the other colors. So I'm kind of looking through here. This vintage rose actually would be a really nice match for this as well. I can absolutely get out my physical swatches, but this makes the process go a lot faster. And especially when I'm familiar with what these colors look like in real life, it's really easy to figure out the colors here. Then we're gonna look into some envelopes, and I know there's a really good envelope that's very similar to this color. So I can search the library, and it's called Chartreuse. Not that one, this one. So I can just grab that chartreuse color, and I know that will work really well for the envelopes themselves. Now we have all the actual materials. I'm thinking that a blue would be nice to pull in like a ribbon or something, but I might not want to fully decide that yet. Or maybe if I do, I know that I'm going to be able to find a navy ribbon. So I'll just kind of make a rectangle here with a navy ribbon, just kind of as a reminder that we are going to have a ribbon here. I usually just make that a rectangle. And I think this is kind of nice. So then I'm thinking, what other colors are we going to need to print? We already have a piece that's navy. So we already have a lot of this green, so we might not want to use the green in printing at all. We already have a piece that's this color, but it's just the wax seal. So maybe we want to feature that somewhere else. We don't have anything that's this color, so that might be a good one to feature, especially if you know that's a color that they really like. So in that case, sometimes I'll just move things around and think like, okay, well, maybe we do these two colors here, and then maybe we need to grab a color that is not necessarily in the palette, but something that will complement it kind of nicely, such as like an ivory sorbet kind of color or something like that for the RSVP. So I'm kind of just moving things around, seeing how they feel together, putting them together, maybe making them larger or smaller based on how frequent they're going to be in the suite. So once I have colors kind of set, I'm going to start looking at any artistic elements. This can include watercolors, frames, vector elements, icons, etc. And typically I kind of know what I'm looking for, so I'm going to just gather a bunch of those. I'm kind of a chaotic designer, so I like to gather a bunch of those on here. The best way to do that usually is just to place them. If you place something in Illustrator, it still exists elsewhere on your computer, and you can make changes to that file, and it's not actually in the file, so it's going to keep your file a little bit smaller. For this one, I know I want to use this particular image that is a public domain image. I'm going to go ahead and place it in here. Now, as you can see, it's a little big, so I'll resize it. I know that I want to use this as my vellum wrap, but if you didn't, you could just kind of put a bunch of elements in here, play with them, etc. So I have this ornate frame that I know that we're going to be using, that I had picked out online specifically for this project. And as you can see in kind of the final version, I also added like the striped envelope liner. I cut some things out of this frame to make this element. And I also used a little dotted border here on the reply card just to give it a little something extra. But these were not elements that I really started with. So I'm often starting with like the big stuff and then kind of pulling in things on top of it. Some things I can make, like for this element, I just cut from this frame. These stripes and this dotted border are things that I can easily make here in Illustrator. So I don't really need to pull those from somewhere. I can just make them whenever I start thinking of them. Oh, we need a little something here. Let's try a dotted border. So I'm going to grab all the elements that are really pivotal to the suite, move them around, see how they go. Like at the beginning, I may not have known if I wanted to use this as an envelope liner or use it as that vellum wrap. So I can try it out in a few different places. When I'm editing these elements, we have vector elements like this one, which are very easy to edit in Illustrator. If I need to change a raster element to a vector element, typically I'm going to use the image trace tool to do that. I have some other videos on that. If I have a raster element, which is something that I can't edit directly here in Illustrator, it's usually like a painting, a watercolor element, etc., then I'll typically edit it over in Photoshop. And because I've placed it in here as opposed to embedding it in here, I can actually just click this edit in Photoshop button and it will open directly here in Photoshop. Let's add like a random saturation layer. This makes it crazy neon green. And when I save this file in Photoshop, because it's linked in Illustrator, it says some files are missing or modified. Would you like to update them? I click yes, and it's all of a sudden going to change that to the crazy neon version. That's obviously not the one you want, so we'll turn it off. And then we pull over in Illustrator, we update it again, and now we're back to kind of our normal files. So I love that I can edit all of my raster elements in Photoshop and then pull them back over here into Illustrator. Now, once we've done that, I'm going to copy and paste all of the text. This is actually something that a lot of people probably start earlier on, but I like to get the design, layout, images, design elements, etc. kind of in and almost placed before I start working on the text. And this is Dubsado. I have a form that all of my clients will fill out. I don't want to give you my clients like personal information, but I'm going to copy and paste everything from this form directly into Illustrator. Because this video is public, I'm just going to use the sample information from that final suite. But when I copy it over, it really is like it's all a mess at that time. I don't have fonts or colors picked out. So this is when I'm going to work on my font choices. I mostly am going to pick the body font first, which I use, you know, the same 5 over and over again, as I'm sure a lot of us do, and change all of the text to that particular body font, in this case, Mrs. Eves. And then if I am using a display font of any sort, in this case, I'm not really, I'll choose that kind of secondary once I have all of that laid out. Then I want to do any of my like colors and layouts and designs for these. So if I have floral elements, I'm gonna put them in now. For this one, it's a good time to get all the colors sorted out. So I'm gonna do this particular color for the background of this piece. I'm gonna do this color for the background of this piece. I'm realizing that all the pieces are vertical, so I want the RSVP card to be vertical as well. Since I knew I wanted to be tone on tone with this, this is where I'm settling the colors. So instead of doing all black text, I'm gonna do kind of the matching tonal text on all of them. This is also when I would change this to the burgundy color that we're using for it. It would have come in, you know, in all black. So I'm gonna start working on all of those different pieces. And now I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, what does it need? Oh, we need our vellum wrap. I don't think that this is best served as the envelope liner. I think it's best served as the vellum wrap. Figure out exactly where I want to place that. Then I'm asking questions about like, what do we need to pull more of? We need a little bit more of this kind of creamy color, and it's kind of tone on tone with a mist. So that's where I might bring in the stripes. I know I want something simple. Stripes are really popular right now, and it will bring in more of that color and still feel kind of neutral against the rest of this envelope liner, because that's what's going to be up next to it in the envelope. And then I'm thinking, okay, this is a little bit boring. You know, we have some soft edges here. Maybe we have some soft edges here. That's where I could change this into an oval shape. And then thinking I needed just a tiny bit more on this card, I added this little polka dotted border. Throughout this, I'm kind of editing. So maybe this wax seal color is no longer one that we want to be closer to the lighter red, but we want to go back to that kind of dark red that we had initially chosen. It's going to match better with this piece. Since we're printing this piece, we can actually match it really closely to the wax seal on purpose. And that's going to show up as a border kind of behind the wax seal. So it's a really good color match there. I like how the colors are playing. I like how the shapes are playing. This doesn't feel really boring. If I need to view anything without all the extra, I click on trim view, and that helps me see what everything's going to look like kind of trimmed down. So I think we have a good mix of colors here. When I'm thinking about the vellum wrap, you know, we have mostly the red in the middle. We'll have the dark blue ribbon across it, and the dark red wax seal will still show up really nice on that lighter red. But then all these colors are playing really nicely with this artwork as well. Of course, I cheated a little because I had already designed this suite. It would not be this fast otherwise. So if you can see how it kind of comes from nothing, goes to like a color palette, we settle on our materials, grab our design elements, edit all of those in Photoshop, and then eventually we kind of add in some of the more simple things like shapes. We added in this color, we added in this envelope liner to match. So we're just making sure it feels cohesive and we like where we're headed. And of course, this was cheating a little because I started with a fully designed suite versus taking you from the beginning. But I hope you can see how we start in Illustrator. We settle everything. We edit all of our elements that are raster over in Photoshop. We bring them into Illustrator when we're working. If we need to edit them along the way, we can bring them back to Photoshop as many times as we want. And then the last piece is what I mainly use InDesign for, and that's the envelopes. So when I'm designing, I'm going to create this sample of what an envelope should look like. And then I will open up InDesign and do what's called a data merge to make sure that their addresses from their address list all get formatted exactly like this. I have a lot of other videos showing exactly how to do this, but basically you would take a spreadsheet and a file that looks like this, just setting up the formatting to match exactly what we have here. And then we can create our merge document. It's going to do this for every single line of our spreadsheet. So then we'll have all of our addresses perfectly set up. And then in InDesign, we can even use what's called a parent page to add that little cute element that we have here. So once we've added that on the parent page, it's now available on every single page. So we have, in this case, 86 different envelopes created. with the correct information and all the exact same formatting that we set up on that file in Illustrator. So just as a reminder, I start everything in Illustrator. All of my raster design elements like watercolors, photos, etc. are going to be edited in Photoshop. Because I've placed them here in Illustrator, they'll automatically update in the Illustrator file anytime I edit them. Vector elements I'll bring directly into Illustrator to edit. And then at the very end, when we're doing our data merge for our envelopes, we will use InDesign to turn our spreadsheet into a perfectly formatted printable address PDF. So I love how all of these programs work together. And if you want to dive further into it, I have full classes on InDesign, Illustrator, and Photoshop and how they all interact specifically for wedding invitation designers in our Creative Cloud Bundle. I'm gonna link it in the description for you. I hope you enjoyed seeing kind of how the process works. And if you wanna dive deeper into all the specifics of file setup, drawing elements, creating stripes like this and dotted lines like this and all of those types of things, then you can do that in the bundle. Let me know what questions you have on how this process works, and thanks for watching.